Today I am reading pages 149 to 164 in the novel, or pages 83 to 92 in the PDF. May 8th, 1992. Dear friend, it's strange how things can change back as suddenly as they changed originally. When one thing happens, and suddenly things are back to normal. On Monday, Brad came back to school. He looked very different, and it wasn't that he was bruised or anything. His face actually looked fine. But before, Brad was always this guy who walked down the hallway with a bounce. I can't really describe it any other way. It's just that some people walk with their heads to the ground for some reason. They don't look other people in the eye. Brad was never like that, but now he is, especially when it comes to Patrick. When I saw them talking quietly in the hall, I was too far away to hear what they said, but I could tell Brad was ignoring Patrick. And when Patrick started to get upset, Brad just closed his locker and walked away. It wasn't that strange because Brad and Patrick never talked in school since Brad wanted to keep things a secret. The strange part was that Patrick would walk up to Brad in the first place, so I guess they didn't meet on golf courses anymore, or even talk on the phone. Later that afternoon, I was having a cigarette outside by myself, and I saw Patrick alone, also having a cigarette. I wasn't really close enough to see him, and I didn't want to interfere with his personal time, so I didn't walk up to him. But Patrick was crying. He was crying pretty hard. And after that, whenever I saw him around anywhere, he didn't look like he was there. He looked like he was someplace else. And I think I knew that because that's how people used to say I was. Maybe they still do, I'm not sure. On Thursday, something really terrible happened. I was sitting alone in the cafeteria eating Salisbury steak when Patrick walked up to Brad, who was sitting with his football buddies, and I saw Brad ignore him like he did at the locker. And I saw Patrick get really upset, but Brad still ignored him. Then I saw Patrick say something and he looked pretty angry as he turned to walk away. Brad sat still for a second and then he turned around. And then I heard it. It was just loud enough for a few tables to hear. The thing that Brad yelled at Patrick. Faggot! Brad's football buddies started laughing. A few tables got quiet as Patrick turned around. He was as mad as hell. I'm not kidding. And he stormed up to Brad's table and said, "What did you call me?" God, he was mad. I'd never seen Patrick like that before. Brad sat quiet for a second, but his buddies kept egging him on by pushing his shoulders. Brad looked up at Patrick and said softer and meaner than the last time, "I called you a faggot." Brad's buddies started laughing even harder. That is, until Patrick threw the first punch. It's kind of eerie when a whole room gets quiet at once, and then the real noise starts. The fight was hard, a lot harder than the one I had with Sean last year. There was no clean punching or things like you see in movies. They just wrestled and hit, and whoever was the most aggressive or got the most angry got in the most hits. In this case, it was pretty even until Brad's buddies got involved, and then it became 5-on-1. And that's when I got involved. I just couldn't watch them hurt Patrick, even if things weren't just clear yet. I think everyone who knew me might have been frightened or confused, except maybe my brother. He taught me what to do in these situations, and I don't really want to go into detail except to say that by the end of it, Brad and his two buddies stopped fighting and just stared at me. His other two friends were lying on the ground. One was clutching the knee I bashed in with one of the metal cafeteria chairs, and the other was holding his face. I kind of swiped at his eyes, but not too bad. I didn't want to be too bad. I looked down at the ground and I saw Patrick. His face was pretty messed up and he was crying hard. I helped him to his feet and then I looked at Brad. And I don't think we'd ever really exchanged two words before, but I guess this was the time to start, and all I said was, "You ever do this again and I'll tell everyone. And that doesn't work. If that doesn't work, I'll blind you." I pointed at his friend who was holding his face, and I knew Brad heard me and I knew that I meant it. He didn't say anything back though, because the security guards at our school came to bring all of us out of the cafeteria. They took us first to the nurse and then to Mr. Small. Patrick started the fight, so he was suspended for a week. Brad's buddies got 3 days each for ganging up on Patrick after they broke up the original fight. Brad wasn't suspended at all because it was self-defense, and I didn't get suspended either because I was just helping to defend when it was 5-on-1. Brad and I got a month's detention starting that day. In detention, Mr. Harris didn't set up any rules. He just let us read or do homework or talk. And it really isn't much of a punishment unless you like the television programs right after school or are very concerned with your permanent record. I wonder if it's all a lie. A permanent record, I mean. On the first day of detention, Brad came to sit next to me. He looked very sad, and I think it all kind of hit him when he stopped feeling numb from the fight. "Charlie?" "Yeah?" "Thanks. Thanks for stopping them." "You're welcome." And that was it. I haven't said anything to him since, and he didn't sit next to me today. At first, when he said it, I was kind of confused, but then when I got to think about it, because I wouldn't want a bunch of my friends beating up Sam, even if I wasn't allowed to like her anymore either. When I got out of detention that day, Sam was waiting for me. The minute I saw her, she smiled. I was numb. I just couldn't believe she was really there. And then I saw her turn and give Brad a really cold look. And Brad said, "Tell him I'm sorry." And Sam replied, "Tell him yourself." Brad looked away and walked to his car. Then Sam walked up to me and messed up my hair. "So, I hear you're this ninja or something." I think I nodded. Sam drove me home in her pickup truck. On the way, she told me that she was really angry at me for doing what I did to Mary Elizabeth. She told me that Mary Elizabeth was a really old friend of hers. She even reminded me that Mary Elizabeth was there for her when she went through that tough time she told me about when she gave me the typewriter. I don't really want to repeat what that was. So she said that when I kissed her instead of Mary Elizabeth, I had really hurt their friendship for a while, because I guess Mary Elizabeth really liked me a lot, and that just made me sad because I didn't know that she liked me that much. I just thought she wanted to expose me to all these great things, and that's what Sam said. "Charlie, you're so stupid sometimes. You know that?" "Yeah, I really do. Know that. Honest." Then she said that Mary Elizabeth and she got over it, and she thanked me for taking Patrick's advice and staying away as long as I did because it made things easier. So then I said, "So can we be friends now?" "Of course," was all she said. "And Patrick?" "And Patrick." "And everyone else?" "And everyone else." And that's when I started crying. But Sam told me to hush. "You remember what I said to Brad?" "Yeah, you told him he should tell Patrick that he was sorry himself." "Well, that goes for Mary Elizabeth too." "I tried, and she told me," "I know you tried. I'm telling you to try again." "Okay." Sam dropped me off. When she was too far away to see me, I started to cry again, because she was my friend again, and that was enough for me. So I made myself promise to never mess up like I did before, and I was never going to, I can tell you that. When I went to the Rocky Horror Picture Show tonight, it was very tense. Not because of Mary Elizabeth, that was actually okay. I said I was sorry, and then I asked her if there was anything else she wanted to say to me. And like before, I asked a question and got a very long answer. When I was done listening, I really did listen. I said I was sorry again, and then she thanked me for not trying to make what I did seem less by offering a lot of excuses. And then things were back to normal, except we were just friends. To tell you the truth, I think the biggest reason for everything being okay is that Mary Elizabeth started dating one of Craig's friends. His name is Peter, and he's in college, which makes Mary Elizabeth happy. At the party at Craig's apartment, I overheard Mary Elizabeth say to Alice that she was much happier with Peter because he was opinionated and they had debates. She said that I was really sweet and understanding, but that our relationship was too one-sided. She wanted a person who was more open to discussion and didn't need someone's permission to talk. I wanted to laugh, or get mad, or maybe shrug at how strange everyone was, especially me. But I was at a party with my friends, so it didn't really matter that much. I just drank because I figured it was about time to stop smoking so much pot. The thing that made the evening tense was Patrick officially quit doing Frankenfurter in the show. He said that he didn't want to do it anymore. Ever. So he sat and watched the show in the audience with me, and he said that things were hard to listen to, because Patrick isn't usually unhappy. "You ever think, Charlie, that our group is just the same as any other group like the football team, and the only real difference between us is what we wear and why we wear it?" "Yeah?" And there was this pause. "Well, I think it's all bullshit." And he meant it, and it was hard to see him mean it that much. Some guy I didn't know from somewhere else just did the part of Frankenfurter. He'd been the second to Patrick for a long time, and now he got his chance. He was pretty good, too. Not as good as Patrick, but pretty good. Love always, Charlie. May 11th, 1992. Dear friend, I've been spending a lot of time with Patrick these days. I really haven't said much. I just kind of listen and nod because Patrick needs to talk. And it isn't like it was with Mary Elizabeth. It's different. It started out on the Saturday morning after the show. I was in my bed trying to figure out why sometimes you can wake up and go back to sleep and other times you can't. Then my mom knocked. "Your friend Patrick's on the phone." So I got up and wiped away the sleep. "Hello? Get dressed, I'm on my way." Click, and that was it. I actually had a lot of work to do since it was getting closer to the end of the school year, but it sounded like we might be having some kind of adventure, so I got dressed anyway. Patrick pulled up about 10 minutes later. He was wearing the same clothes he wore the night before. He hadn't showered or anything. I don't even think he went to bed. He was just wide awake on coffee and cigarettes and mini-thins, which are these small pills you can buy at the Quick Mart or truck stops. They keep you awake. They're not illegal either, but they make you thirsty. So I climbed in Patrick's car, which was filled with cigarette smoke. He offered one, but I said not in front of my house. "Your parents don't know you smoke?" "No, should they?" "Well, I guess not." And then we started driving. Fast. At first, Patrick didn't say much. He just listened to the music on the tape player. And after the second song started, I asked him if it was the mixtape I made him for Secret Santa Christmas. I've been listening to it all night. Patrick had a smile all over his face. It was a sick smile, glazed and numb. He just turned up the volume and drove faster. "I'll tell you something, Charlie. I feel good. You know what I mean? Really good. Like I'm free or something. Like I don't have to pretend anymore. I'm going away to college, right? It'll be different. You know what I mean?" "Sure," I said. "I've been thinking all night about what kind of posters I want to put up in my dorm room and if I'll have an exposed brick wall. I've always wanted an exposed brick wall so I can paint it. You know what I mean?" And I just nodded this time because he didn't really wait for a sure. Things will be different there. They have to be. They will be, I said. You really think so? Sure. Thanks, Charlie. And that's kind of how it went all day. We went to see a movie, and we ate pizza. And every time Patrick started getting tired, we got coffee, and he ate another mini thin or two. When things started turning dusk outside, he showed me all the places he and Brad would meet. He didn't say much about them, he just stared. We ended up at the golf course. We sat on the 18th green, which was pretty high on a hill, and we watched the sun disappear. By this time, Patrick had bought a bottle of red wine with his fake ID, and we passed it back and forth, just talking. Did you hear about Lily? He asks. Who? Lily Miller. I don't know what her real first name was, but they called her Lily. She was a senior when I was a sophomore. I don't think so. I thought your brother would have told you. It's a classic. Maybe. Okay, stop me if you've heard it. Okay. So Lily comes here with this guy who was in the lead of all the plays. Parker? Yeah, right, Parker. How'd you know? My sister had a crush on him. Perfect. We were getting pretty drunk. So Parker and Lily came here one night, and they were so in love. He even gave her his thespian pin or something. At this point, Patrick is spitting out wine between sentences. He's laughing so hard. They even had a song, something like Broken Wings by that band, Mr. Mister. I don't even know, but I hope it was Broken Wings because that would make the story perfect. Keep going, I encouraged. Okay, he swallowed. So they've been going out for a long time, and I think they've even had sex before, but this was going to be a special night. She packed a little picnic, and he brought a boom box to play Broken Wings. Patrick just couldn't get over the song. He laughed for 10 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry. So they have this picnic with sandwiches and everything, and they started making out, and the stair is playing, and they're just about to do it when Parker realizes he forgot the condoms, and they're both naked on this putting green, and they both want each other, and there's no condom. So what do you think happened? I don't know. Well, they did it doggy style with one of the garbage sandwich bags. No, was all I could really say. Yes, was Patrick's rebuttal. God, was my counter. Yes, was Patrick's conclusion. And after we shook off the giggles and wasted most of the wine with spit takes, he turned to me. Do you want to know the best part? What? She was valedictorian, and everyone knew it when she went up to give her speech. There was nothing like the deep breaths after laughing that hard. Nothing in the world like a sore stomach for the right reasons. It was that great. So Patrick and I shared all the stories we could think of. There was a kid named Barry. He used to build kites in art class, and then after school he would attach firecrackers to the kite and fly it and blow it up. And now he's studying to be an air traffic controller. Patrick's story via Sam. And then there was this kid named Chip who spent all of his money from allowance at Christmas and birthdays to buy bug killing equipment, and he would go door to door asking if he could kill the bugs for free. My story via my sister. Then there was this guy named Carl Burns, and everyone called him CB. And one day CB got so drunk at a party he tried to fuck the host's dog. Patrick's story. And then there was this guy they called Action Jack because supposedly he got caught masturbating at a drunk party, and every pep rally the kids would clap and chant, Action Jack, clap, 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 Action Jack. My story via my brother. There were other stories and other names. Second base Stace, who had breasts in the fourth grade and would let some of the boys feel them. Vincent, who took acid and tried to flush a sofa down the toilet. Sheila, who allegedly masturbated with a hot dog and had to go to the emergency room. The list went on and on. And by the end, all I could think of was what these people must feel like when they go to their class reunions. I wonder if they're embarrassed, and I wonder if that's a small price to pay for being a legend. After we sobered up a bit with coffee and mini thins, Patrick drove me home. The mixtape I made for him hit a bunch of winter songs, and Patrick turned to me. Thanks, Charlie. Sure. No, I mean in the cafeteria. Sure. And after that, it was quiet. He drove me home and pulled up in the driveway. We hugged goodnight, and just as I was about to let go, he held me a little tighter, and then he moved his face to mine, and then he kissed me. A real kiss. And then he pulled away real slow. I'm sorry. No, that's okay. Really, I'm sorry. No, really, it was okay. So he said thanks and hugged me again, and moved in to kiss me again, and I just let him. I don't know why. We stayed in his car for a long time. We didn't do anything other than kiss, and we didn't even do that for very long. After a while, his eyes lost the glazy, numb look from the wine or the coffee or the fact that he had just stayed up the night before, and then he started crying. And then he started talking about Brad. And I just let him, because that's what friends are for. Love always, Charlie. May 17th, 1992. Dear friend, it seems like every morning since the first night I wake up dull and my head hurts and I can't breathe. Patrick and I have been spending a lot of time together. We drink a lot. Actually, it's more like Patrick drinks and I sip. It's just hard to see a friend hurt this much, especially when you can't do anything except be there. I want to make him stop hurting, but I can't. So I just follow him around wherever he wants to show me his world. One night, Patrick took me to this park where men go to find each other. Patrick told me that if I didn't want to be bothered by anyone, I should not make eye contact. He said that eye contact is how you agree to fool around anonymously. Nobody talks, they just find places to go. After a while, Patrick saw somebody he liked. He asked me if I needed any cigarettes, and when I said no, he patted my shoulder and walked away with his boy. I just sat on a bench looking around. All I saw there were the shadows of people, some on the ground, some by a tree, some just walking. It was so quiet. After a few minutes, I lit a cigarette and I heard somebody whisper. "You got an extra cigarette?" the voice asked. I turned around and saw a man in the shadow. "Sure," I said. I reached out a hand to hand the man a cigarette. He took it. "You got a light?" he said. "Sure," and I struck a match for him. Instead of just leaning down and lighting the cigarette, he reached out to make a cup around the match with our hands, which is something we all do when it's windy, but it wasn't windy. I think he just wanted to touch my hands because while he was lighting the cigarette, he did it for a lot longer than necessary. Maybe he wanted to see his face over the glow of the match, to see how handsome he was. I don't know. He did look familiar, but I couldn't figure out from where. He blew out the match. "Thanks," and exhaled. "No problem," I said. "Mind if I sit down?" he asked. "Not really." He sat down and said a few things, and it was his voice. I recognized his voice. So I lit another cigarette and looked at his face again and thought hard, and that's when I figured it out. It was the guy who does the sports on the TV news. "Nice night," he said. And I couldn't believe it. I guess I managed to nod because he kept talking about sports. He kept talking about how the designated hitter in baseball was bad and why basketball was a commercial success and what teams looked promising in college football. He even mentioned my brother's name, I swear. And all I said was, "So what's it like being on television?" And it must have been the wrong thing to say because he just got up and walked away. And it was too bad because I wanted to ask him if he thought my brother would make it to the pros. Another night, Patrick took me to this place where they sell poppers, which is a drug you inhale. They didn't have poppers, but the guy behind the counter said that he had something that was just as good. So Patrick bought that. It was in this aerosol can. We both took a sniff of it, and I swear we both thought we were going to die of a heart attack. All in all, I think Patrick took me to about every place where there is to go that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. There was this karaoke bar on one of the main streets in the city, and there was this dance club, and in this one bathroom, in this one gym, all these places. Sometimes Patrick would pick up guys. Sometimes he wouldn't. He said it was hard being safe, and you never know. The nights he would pick me up, somebody always made him sad. And it's hard, too, because Patrick began every night really excited. He always said he felt free, and tonight was his destiny, and things like that. But by the end of that night, he just looked sad. And sometimes he would talk about Brad, and sometimes he wouldn't. But after a while, the whole thing just wasn't interesting anymore, and he ran out of things to keep himself numb. So tonight, he dropped me off at home. It was the night we went back to the park where the men met, and the night he saw Brad there with some guy. Brad was too into what he was doing to notice us. Patrick didn't say anything. He didn't do anything. He just walked back to the car, and we drove in silence. And on the way, he threw the wine bottle out the window, and it landed with a crash. And this time, he didn't try to kiss me like he had every night. He just thanked me for being his friend and drove away. Love always, Charlie.